This is Jared Doerfler, and you're listening to the Built in Iowa podcast. A show highlighting CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs that are starting, building, and growing companies in the great state of Iowa. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Built in Iowa. On today's episode, we have Rena Striegel. Rena is owner of Transition Point Business Advisors and resides in the Des Moines area. Rena, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you tonight because, coming out of this podcast, you're talking about something that I haven't talked to a business owner like you yet that is doing something a little bit differently, right? And so I'm really excited to kind of get into your business, understand it better, and how you can possibly help other people out there.
Awesome. Well, I will be happy to share all I know.
Rena, tell us what Transition Point Business Advisors does.
So Transition Point was established in 2014 as a sort of a passion project almost. It was founded by John Severson and David Striegel. And they saw a real need in the world of family businesses to help families who were transitioning their business either from generation to generation or generation, from one owner to another owner. And they found that there was not a lot in the marketplace that supported those kinds of transactions, over the period of time that they actually occur. And so they formed Transition Point as a way to support people who were going through that process. So that's where we started. And since then, we've evolved quite a bit. Our main focus is still family-owned business transitions, but now we also do several other things, including leadership development work and team synergy, strategic planning, executive coaching, all with the intention of being able to support businesses who are in now any kind of transition, not just ownership transitions.
Is there a specific vertical that you guys go after within the family-owned business?
Yeah, we've actually created quite a niche for ourselves in the world of succession planning because we focus very heavily on agriculture. So a large majority of our clients are actually families that own farms. And so we are a little bit unique in the marketplace because we are so heavily focused there.
So I imagine being located in Iowa serves you very well, right?
It's really interesting. We actually, up until a couple of years ago, we didn't have that many farms in Iowa.
Really?
And the reason for that is because the Farm Journal magazine had started a project called the Legacy Project. And they had several experts that were on a panel, and they traveled these experts all over the United States. So John at that time was on the Legacy panel. And so he went all over the United States talking about succession planning. So we ended up having farms all over the place with very few in the state of Iowa.
Interesting.
So over the course of the last couple of years, we've kind of tried to course correct that a little bit. And now we do have a fairly significant footprint in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. But we still have a national presence, and we still do quite a bit of traveling all over the country, helping farms of all types do their succession planning work.
Wow. Very, very, very cool. So walk us through a succession planning process from an agricultural standpoint, especially within families.
Sure. So it actually is quite complicated. And I hate to say the word complicated because that makes it seem like it's not accessible, but it has quite a few moving pieces. And one of the big sort of misconceptions in succession planning is that it can be done through documents, meaning we just go to the lawyer, we get documents that say what's going to happen when somebody dies or when somebody wants to sell out, and then that's all we have to do. We actually take a quite a bit broader scope perspective of it, in that when we look at it, we feel as though there are, first we have to get some alignment. So we need to understand where all the people who are going to be a part of this process are actually at and what they believe. So we start out doing interviews of all of the key stakeholders that are going to be involved in the transaction. So we could be interviewing 11 or more people before we even do anything else. And as we start moving through the process, what we're really trying to do is keep family alignment. If it's a family business, like aligning around goals and what we all want for the future. So we're looking at not only the ultimate ownership transition, but we are also very heavily focused on how are we doing the management transition? So how do we transition decision making? How are we transitioning operational activity? And we're also looking at governance, meaning how do we govern the transaction when some of the owners are transitioned, but perhaps they still have quite a bit of money invested in the operation itself. So we end up looking at the whole transaction pretty comprehensively, trying to make sure that we bring the whole group of people through the process and making sure that everybody stays healthy in terms of the way that they're communicating and the way they're working, so that the family remains in a harmonious state at the end of the transaction.
So how does that work then? Somebody owns a family farm and they just call you up and they're saying, hey, look, we're interested in succession planning. And then if they do that, when you have your first meeting, is everyone kind of aware what the process is, or is it usually somebody that owns the farm is kind of trying to do it secretly? Have you seen both?
I've seen both, but our philosophy, and my philosophy in particular, is one of transparency, meaning I think when you do any kind of planning like this in secrecy, then everybody's going to get a surprise. And most people don't like surprises when it has to do with their future, or with what they perceive they're going to inherit, or who they may have to run the business with. So there's a lot of things that can go very wrong when it's done in secret. So our goal at Transition Point is to make sure that we try to involve all stakeholders from the very beginning, that we are communicating appropriate messages to the right group. So for instance, farm siblings who are going to be the operators may need different messages or pieces of information than siblings who live out of state and never come back to the farm except for to visit at Christmas. So we work with the family to tailor the messages to, again, keep everybody informed, let people know where we're at in the process, and handle any concerns or fears or any kind of stressors that are popping up as a part of the process, to make sure that we are eliminating tension for the family.
And how long does it typically take a business to successfully transition within a succession plan?
It really depends on how long they leave the runway. So, if we've got a farmer, let's just say, who comes to me and he's 78 years old, that transition plan may be really fast. We may have to turn that around in a couple of years. The trend now is that we are seeing farmers come to us much earlier. I've had farmers come to me as early as their early 40s, while their children are still really young, and say, we want to start thinking about how this will look for our kids should they decide that they want to come into the farming operation. So the trend is definitely coming down. Our average decision makers that are coming to us are usually in their late 50s, early 60s. And that usually leaves, anywhere from a 5 to 10 year runway, which is definitely adequate time, particularly if they've got children that have been farming with them for several years. We usually have a really good base for a planning process at that point.
What's the longest time you've worked on a succession plan for?
Well, we have one right now that we're in our 10th year.
Oh, that's so long.
It is, but the farm is very large. It's very innovative, and we've actually got right now on that farm, we have 4 generations of family members that are working on the farm. So sometimes it's not just like a dad to a son or a dad to a daughter. Sometimes we've got grandparents, fathers and mothers, their kids, and their kids all in the operation, simply because a lot of times people stay very active and vibrant in their family operations, even post what we would consider a retirement age. So it is not unusual for us to have multiple generations where we're actually doing more than one plan for a generation at a time. So we could be working on grandpa's transition, his daughter's transition, because now she's in her 60s. We've got her kids now that are in their, potentially their 40s, and we're thinking about their transition, because farmers now are not really wanting to be 100% involved in the farm, late into their years. They're wanting that exit plan for their 60s so they can go and enjoy some things they want to do. And then we've got a lot of times young ones that are, in their teens, but are very interested in coming into the farm. And so we're working to develop them from a very young age. I've had kids as young as 13 sitting in on strategic planning sessions and taking part in operational decision making about the strategy and future of the farm. So it can be really comprehensive in terms of who is involved.
That's pretty impressive. So now on the flip side of that, what is the shortest transition that you've worked through?
6 months.
6 months. That is quick. I mean, if you think about going to buy a business, or acquire a company, 6 months is quick.
It was a really down to business kind of transaction. We had a family that the brother had reached the age where he physically was experiencing some things that would not allow him to continue farming. We wanted to try to wrap up that transaction by the end of the year so that they were going into the new year with the transaction completed. And so we had to really hustle to get that done. And thankfully that family was all on board in the same way. They were very supportive of that decision. So they made decisions quickly, and we got it done. It was fast, but it was exciting.
That is fast. And so, Rena, from a financial perspective, do you guys get involved with that, or do you have partners that get involved with that? Because I imagine some of these people need loans, or they need outside funding or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that come together. So Transition Point, we are just consultants. So we are not insurance people, we're not lawyers, we're not CPAs. So what we do is we work with the family to identify goals, and we really focus on the people part of the transaction. What we do is when we get clarity around goals, though, is we start to bring other professionals to the table. So a typical succession planning team will include myself, it will include a lawyer, it will include a CPA, and sometimes it includes the insurance people to come in and kind of supplement. And we always at some point include the banker, because the banker at the end of the day has to buy into what we're doing. And so at various stages along the way, we've got all these different people kind of coming together and working collaboratively to support that family and that family farm.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So with working with so many different people, especially family-owned businesses, does it ever get messy?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So it can. A lot of times professionals are not very well equipped to deal with some of the emotions that come up when we start talking about family farm and family legacy and family history. And so inside of that, sometimes we can get a lot of emotions, and there can be some disappointments because maybe what they want to do, they can't do, or there is a huge aversion to certain things like paying taxes. And things have changed over time. So, what was maybe the thing to do in the 70s or 80s, some of those farm structures have not been updated over the course of all these years. So we have to look at decisions that were made a long time ago and try to figure out in the current environment how to make a transition plan work. So it is hard to keep everybody focused because it's really easy to get confused. There's a lot of voices to be heard, and you have to deal with people's emotions constantly. And At the end of the day, every farm family will tell you that they're really concerned about their family being able to sit down and have Christmas dinner and Thanksgiving together and actually want to be there and talk to each other. And they're also really concerned most of the time about holding that farm together. They want that history, that legacy of farming to remain intact. So there's just a lot of pride of these families because their histories in the Midwest are very long for most of them. We're working with multiple generations of farming for most of the groups that I work with. So there's a lot of emotion for a lot of different reasons.
Do you ever receive a phone call after the deal has been done and somebody's like, hey, they're not abiding by what we had in place?
We do get those every once in a while. And in fact, I got one of those today, in fact. And that usually isn't so much a product of people purposefully doing something wrong. Most of the time, they just get a little off track or they can't really remember. And people will be people. So, life creeps in and things start to look different, and then disappointments come, and what somebody agreed to 2 years ago might look really different today if their circumstances have changed. So what we do is we review our plan with the family every year. So as we go through it, we are updating, we're addressing issues and concerns, we're coaching new players as they're coming on the scene, we're helping families set up employment policies and ownership policies, and as many things as we can to where we can get everybody to really understand and document what we've talked about, what we're agreeing to, just to help that family keep on track and have things firmly in place so that the misinterpretation of them becomes a little harder to do because we've got things documented. We can alter the documents and we can make changes, but at least we're agreeing to do that, which helps a lot of families stay on track.
Interesting. It's really cool that you do meet with the families once a year, just to kind of review that plan. I think that's always good to review plans that are put into place, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's any kind of thing that you have in place for your family, whether it's a will or powers of attorneys or anything, they should be reviewed very frequently. That doesn't just go for our farm families. That goes for any family that runs a business together. Things should just be looked at on a fairly regular basis because things go out of date. Laws change, language inside documents changes. There's a lot of things that just need to be updated and reviewed on a very regular basis.
So Rena, do you know, no idea if this is even a relevant statistic, do you know the amount of family farms that are passed down generational, that are purchased, how many of those that use a service that's like you, or do a lot of them just, hey, this is just pay me this over the next 10 years and we'll be happy?
It's hard to know how many people are actually, using someone like me. Our business, quite frankly, is very unique in the world of succession planning because we don't have any of those other services like legal, CPA, insurance. So we are fairly unique. I know how many I work with a year. So, I would assume there's a large portion of family businesses that do not have someone like me to help them with those things. But I will tell you, there's also, there's a lot of great professionals out there that have, they're just incredibly experienced. And for a lot of people, if they just want to make some decisions and put it in writing and sign some paperwork, that can work just fine too. For others, there's a complexity factor that creeps in, which makes it very hard for them to make decisions. There's a lot of things to consider. A farm that's transitioning to a sole heir is very different to a multifaceted farming operation that has 3 people in the business that are family members and 3 people who live off the farm. The complexity starts to occur very rapidly as you add different factors. And that can occur in any type of family business. But with farming, you throw in the added complexity of the emotional component of the tie back to the land. You are a built-in Iowa podcaster, so people's farming roots run really deep whether they live in Iowa on a farm or whether they are working in a big city somewhere, everybody who comes from a family farm has a very deep emotional connection to that part of their history. And so family farms just have that complexity that other types of family businesses often do not.
Wow, that's a great analogy there. So Rena, tell us something that, because you worked with a lot of farms, tell us something that we don't know about farms.
Well, I kind of keep this running list of things that I did not know. And I am from a farm in Iowa. I grew up on a dairy and a hog farm in Wachier, Iowa. So, I thought I knew a lot about farming until I started working with farmers. So one of the cool things that I was taught by a little 9-year-old girl is that chickens snore. I don't know that a lot of people know that. So that's kind of cool.
That's cute. Yeah.
I think a lot of the other things, it's like the technology that you see on farms now is exciting and amazing. And so I'm constantly, learning about new technology that is on the farm, new apps that they use, the way that they can do a lot of work with GPS and mapping. And so all of that, in my opinion, is probably known, but when you get out on the farm and you can actually see how that app is being used, the application of certain things, it's really, really exciting. Really exciting.
Really cool to hear. And I've heard a lot of the same. We've had a couple egg-based people on the show, and the technology in Iowa is incredible in agriculture.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always love to just spend a little time just hanging out, getting in the pickup, driving around, seeing what they're doing, and looking at what kind of tech is being used, because every different operation has got something else, some variation that they are using or testing, even down to the way that they track the health of their animals on an individualized basis. But I call them Fitbits, like where they can, put cow Fitbits on your dairy cattle, and you can literally know minute by minute how that cow is doing. I mean, that to me is just amazing that we've got access to that. And it really speaks a lot to the sort of the commitment that people have to what they produce and how well they produce it, because that technology is just, it's an incredible investment for some of these operations, and yet they do it because they really truly care about what they're doing. And that to me is just cool. It's really neat to learn what they're doing out there.
Rena, so tell us your story, and how did you become the owner of Transition Point?
Okay, so this I'm going to say really fast because this itself could be quite a drama. But as I alluded to, I grew up on a farm in Iowa, went off to college, thought I was going to be a musician. So I was studying music and theater and lots of things, and ended up taking an anthropology class. And that anthropology class got me really interested in other cultures. So I decided to drop out of school, went to India for the first time, came back, thought I was going to switch from music to medicine because I wanted to be a Doctors Without Borders girl, and got coached by an intern that said by the time I got through medical school and retooled my whole education, I was going to be a whopping 35 years old and way too old I was going to miss my opportunity to be married and have kids. I was just going to be old. Well, when you're a little bit confused about where you want to go, somebody can say something like that and change your whole direction. So he suggested I go to business school, which I did. I ended up going to the University of Iowa MBA program. And his rationale for that was, rather than be a doctor, why not be an administrator? Like really make a difference and make an impact in medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, which then led me to starting my first consulting company. And that consulting company took me to India for 4 years again, working in the business sector. So I had the privilege to work with loosely, meaning, training, speaking to roughly 10,000 businesses in 4 years. Wow. And then I came back and I was home to renew my business passport and my visa. And another consulting friend told me about a little company in Des Moines, Iowa that was looking for a consultant. And so I interviewed, and they were kind enough to hire me. And they were also kind enough to let me bring all of the things I had been doing in my consulting company and nest all of that into what they were already doing. And so that company was Transition Point, and I worked for them for a couple of years. And then because they were succession planners, I was the succession plan for Transition Point. And so I was able to buy that company effective January 1st of 2019. And I still have a great relationship with the previous owners. In fact, I still office out of their office building. And John and David literally sit 2 doors down from me. And so I get the benefit of all of those years of, consulting with business owners. They are still advisors and do some consulting work still to this day with Transition Point. So I was very fortunate that a series of conversations led me right back to Iowa, right where I belong.
It's funny how it all works out, isn't it?
I tell you, it's my grandmother is she passed away last year, but she was never really too sure about any of my choices. Like India, bad idea. Studying music and theater, bad idea. Just lots of bad choices from my grandmother's point of view, because she was a farmer. She was a farm woman. And she, when I took the job with Transition Point and I sat down and talked with her, her comment to me was, well, she said, if you're working with farmers, then you'll be happy for the rest of your life. And so far, she's absolutely proved to be correct. This has been one of the most fulfilling roles that I've ever played. I feel like it's a huge privilege to be able to help families with these kind of conversations and these decisions. And I'm just looking forward to many more years of serving families in this way.
And how many employees and consultants do you currently have at Transition Point?
So we have a fluctuating level of consultants based upon needs. So on staff, there's just 2 of us, myself and our operations manager, Tom. And so we bring other consultants to the table as needed. So we've got experts in HR, we've got experts in governance, we've got experts in strategic planning, in succession planning, and in executive coaching. So we have a very deep bench of professionals who are involved. And right now, every single one of our independent consultants are engaged in a project, if not multiple projects. So we're really fortunate that we are blessed with the work that we have and with the consultants who will stay engaged with us, because they very much, have the same heart for the clients that I do. They do a great job when they're out in the field, and we can really expand our reach and help more people because of their willingness to work with us.
And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but you are essentially a business that goes anywhere in the United States, correct?
Yes.
So do you have like a concerted effort to kind of focus more on one area, maybe Iowa or more maybe the Midwest? Or are you kind of just going where your clients take you?
We go where the client takes us. I will tell you that the Midwest is definitely the hot spot. And the reason why I say that is because the farms here are very large for the most part. The land value here it's high. And when you get out to the coast, there's definitely there's a different culture around farming at the coast as opposed to the Midwest. So we definitely work primarily in the Midwest, but it's always exciting to work with the farms that are on the coast, because they are so different. So again, it isn't really so much a matter of that we've tried really hard to concentrate, but we are a referral only business. So we don't do really any advertising. We are very, very blessed that our clients have faith in us and they introduce us to other families that they feel would be a good fit for us. And so I take that as a huge honor, but then I also feel very responsible that if a family refers somebody and they're in New York or Washington, I'm going to go because somebody was kind enough to have faith in us that we could serve that family well. So
Gotcha.
We don't really put a lot of restrictions on where we go, which it's exciting. You get to learn a lot of new things because you're traveling all over the place.
Oh, I can only imagine. And that was going to be my next question, actually, is how people find out about your business. And because I can't imagine a lot of people on Google, succession planning for farms, right? So it's mostly word of mouth then, or it's all word of mouth.
It is all word of mouth. We've also had, the privilege of being able to still stay connected to Farm Journal Legacy Project. When John transitioned, I transitioned into that. And so we're featured quite frequently in national publications. We also speak very regularly at conferences. So
Okay.
we get a lot of exposure to people when we're out and about. So, we do a lot of educating and we work with a lot of groups, and that also helps. But for the most part, our clients that come to us are usually either directly, they've met me at a conference and spent some time with me, or another client or a professional colleague has referred a farm family to us.
That's very cool, because the best lead you can get is a referral.
Well, it's really nice because there is some trust that's built in at that point, and they tend to open up to us much quicker, which allows us to serve them much faster. So there is a lot of wonderful benefits that come as a result of people referring us to others.
And Rena, what's your future vision of Transition Point?
Oh, we've got some really exciting things in the works.
Let's hear them.
Yeah. So we are actually getting ready. So for the most part, a family that can afford to work with consultants is usually of a certain size. And there are, especially as farm economics get tighter and tighter, there's less and less cash. There's still a lot of need. There's still a lot of farms that are transitioning, but they're making decisions, in a way that will keep their operations sustainable. There's not a lot of extra for people like me. And so my heart is truly to help as many families as I can. Like I've just got that sort of in my DNA to help as many as possible. So we're in the process right now of developing some online programming that's got some supporting material where a family can sit down and they can go through modules, and they will be able to work on exactly what I would be doing with them if I were live in person on their farm.
Really cool.
So we're in the process of digitizing some things, creating some videos that will, feature me going through the material. We'll also be establishing then some mastermind groups for those farms so they can come together as a collective and problem solve with each other without having to pay the ticketed price of having a consultant come to your operation and work individually with you. So we're trying to create a space in kind of that middle market realm where we can still help a lot of people and make it a little bit more accessible, especially right now in the times that we're living in, where cash is king and people are wanting to hold on to it.
Really cool idea. Kudos to branching out there. Sounds like it's a little bit like an online like e-course learning, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more dynamic than just like your normal class. Oh my goodness, like putting it all together and developing it has been like a whirlwind of learning for me. But we should be ready to launch that project midsummer. And we're going to be beta testing it. So we're going to be looking for some farms to come through and give me some feedback. We'll tweak what we need to tweak, but we're definitely committed to providing maximum value for the program. And then we'll just keep building the library out. So our farms that come and work with us are going to have new material coming to them all the time as we sort of identify new challenges and issues that we're seeing as we go through whatever period in the economy that we're going to be going through.
I love it. Okay, are you ready for the final 5 questions?
I am.
Okay, first one's always fun. So what would you consider your biggest professional failure?
Oh, the biggest failure. Okay, so I can tell that one easy. So the first consulting company that I started, I went into that with zero plan, no plan at all. So I just jumped in. I thought that was going to be a great way to escape my banking job. And yeah, launching a new business without a plan and no clients in sight, bad idea.
Understood. I imagine you learned that pretty quickly, didn't you?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason I am now a planner, right? I think that now I've learned that lesson really, really well.
Sure. And what would you consider your biggest professional success?
I think my biggest success probably has been, oh gosh, I would say my biggest success probably has been taking the leap of faith to go back to India the second time as a consultant. That created such a depth of experience being, working in a different country, different cultures, different business environment where things are not as easy as they are here. That was a massive expansion of skill set for me. So I think that was one of my best successes, is just taking the leap of faith to go there and stay for as long as I did.
What is one piece of advice you would give to a new entrepreneur or founder of a company or somebody that bought a company in their first 90 days?
In the first 90 days, if you're buying a company, know your people. Who is coming with you? Make sure that you know what asset you have in them, and spend a lot of time understanding how you're going to work with them, and really working on managing whatever fear or anxiety they have about a new owner. So that'd be number one, because your people are gold every time. If you're going to launch a new business, I would say almost the same thing. Who are you surrounding yourself with in the early days? Like, don't be arrogant and egotistical to think I can just go and my idea is going to be awesome and it's going to be successful. Really surround yourself with people who will support you, help you make good decisions, and get that business off to a very solid start. And then just keep asking for advice and mentoring all along the way, because you're never going to be as good as you need to be without other people.
I love that. Great advice. Great advice. All right, Rena, what is your company website and any social media that you can share with the listeners?
Okay, so our website is www.tomorrowiscoming.com. And then you can find us everywhere. I personally am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I will say that tomorrow, Transition Point doesn't have near the presence as what I do. So I would just say link up with me. You'll pretty much know everywhere we're at, what we're doing, and particularly anybody who's interested in the upcoming online programs, whether you're a family farm or whether you're just a family business. Please, please, please come and keep in contact, because we are going to be looking for some people to beta test. And so we love some volunteers to help us out with that and get it launched right, so we can help a lot of people get these transitions done in a healthy way.
And Rena, what are your social handles then? And spell your last name for everybody.
Okay, so my last name is spelled S as in Sam, T as in Tom, Riegel. And social media handles, on Facebook, it's Rena E as in Elizabeth Striegel. Twitter is B-I-Z, Coach Rena. And Instagram is Rena Striegel.
I love it.
LinkedIn is also Rena Striegel. So pretty easy.
That's the easiest one always. Okay, since you're an Iowa local, right? This is an important question. I always love how people answer this. So Iowa State, or neither in athletics, do you have a team?
Oh gosh. Okay. So this is like the thing I avoid like the plague, because most of my family went to Iowa State. I went to Iowa. I coached I was a tutor for Iowa football. So I have to be really careful. And so I love our Iowa sports teams. I'm so thankful for them. I'm so thankful they bring such joy to so many. And I'm just going to root for all of them. And when they play each other, I just go to the grocery store and try not to get involved.
Okay, right on. All right, guys. Rena Striegel of Transition Point Business Advisors. They are located in the Des Moines area and have 2 employees. Rena bought the company in 2019. And most importantly, Rena roots for Iowa State, and we're going to throw Drake in there, and you and I.
I love it. I'll root for all of them. Go Iowa.
Rena, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You bet. Thank you.
head to our podcast page at builtiniowa.co. Thanks so much for listening this week. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. While you're there, please leave us a review. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Built in Iowa.